Hi class, this is Abby.
And this is Rachel.
And we're excited to introduce you today to Gini Dietrich. She is the CEO of Dietrich, an integrated communications firm based in Chicago, and the author of the book we're reading for class called Spin Sucks. Ginny, let me take a minute to introduce you to our students. This is an online class taught through Arizona State University, and all of our students are receiving their certificate in special events management. And they're taking this public relations for special events class in order to fulfill the requirements of that certificate. Their majors are varied and include things such as tourism management, business administration, and communications. And thank you so much for being here with us today to talk a little bit about public relations and most specifically your book, Spin Sucks. So if you could, to get us started, why don't you tell us a little bit about your firm and what prompted you to write this book?
So I started blogging in 2006 under the moniker Spin Sucks. The vision of the blog is to change the perception that people have of the PR industry. So neither of you are probably, this won't come as a surprise to either one of you, but our industry has a pretty bad perception issue, and that is that we're liars and we're spin doctors, and Hollywood doesn't really help, with House of Cards and Wag the Dog and Damage, and all these shows on TV and movies that really show sort of the bad side of our industry. And so the blog launched to fight that perception, to help people understand that though there's a small piece of our industry that does that, most of us are pretty ethical, and the way that we do things are, right for organizations and right for us, and we're not out there being spin doctors and liars. So fast forward to 2014 when the book came out, and it really is a takeoff of the blog, really to reach a broader audience. And it was written with the CEO in mind, so that he or she understands what to ask of his or her communications team, what kinds of things can be measured, and how to stay ahead of ever-changing trends.
That's great, thank you. We also asked our students to talk about the PESO model and how that concept relates directly to the publicity and promotion of special events. What are your thoughts on that?
For special events, I think it's really interesting to look at it as an integrated whole. So you have paid, earned, shared, and owned media, and you're taking that and you're integrating it all. So you're going to announce the event, for instance, and you may use some more traditional things like direct mail, a postcard. You may do some paid advertising, with calendar listings or an ad in the newspaper or even in the trade publication. You'll use some earned media, of course, to get journalists to talk about it, have media come out to the event, those kinds of things. Of course, you're going to use shared media, your social networks, to help people understand that it's coming and save the date, and then, what to expect and all those kinds of things. And then integrating that with your own content. So perhaps you're doing things like a video that talks about what you can expect at the event, and an infographic that has research that you're going to unveil at the event, or blog posts or white papers. I mean, there's a whole bunch of things that you could do, and you integrate all of that into one piece, and it sort of becomes this never-ending cycle of publicity and promotion.
The PESO model is somewhat of puts formula around what most of us in public relations have been doing for a long time. Maybe the concept of shared has been added in, but kind of what drove that for you to kind of put it into an actual discussion point, as opposed to just knowing we were doing it as communications professionals, but actually give it a name, give it a formula?
Well, I mean, I think to go back to the vision of Spin Sucks, which is to change the perception of the PR industry, I think one of the things that we're really bad at as an industry at doing is helping people understand what we do. And so even though I know I get criticized all the time because it is what we do, but nobody can explain it in such a succinct manner. And so part of the process of figuring out our internal process as a communications firm, we wanted to figure out sort of that tactical execution piece. And then I just had a designer design it, and suddenly it became the PESO model. And it's funny because I have a friend who always says, well, that's Mexican currency. And I'm like, yeah, but you remember it, right? So, having that acronym, I think is helpful too. And it's been funny to watch it sort of take off, because I think that it is what everybody's already doing. It just makes it more succinct.
And visual. You can now see it and put it into action. Sure.
Yeah.
Right. Great. And then you also, in your book, talked about the concept of astroturfing. Can you share some recent examples of how that's being played out?
Yes. actually, we have a client, and I don't think she'll mind me telling you the story, but they have an app that they've launched in the iTunes store, and part of getting noticed by iTunes or by Apple is that you have to have reviews. And so she called one of our interns and she said, without even realizing, what she was asking, she said, "Can you guys create some accounts and review this app so that we can get on the front page of iTunes?" And the intern, bless her soul, knew something was wrong with that. So she called me and she said, "I don't really know what to tell the client, but I feel like this isn't ethical." And I was like, "Oh my gosh, no, it's not ethical at all." That's astroturfing. And so, creating fake accounts in order to give good or negative or positive or neutral reviews, give a review is astroturfing. It's not good. The story I tell in the book is of Rupert Murdoch, who asked his marketing team of about 200 people to each create 10 fake accounts, so that anytime anybody said anything negative about Fox News online, their job was to use those 10 accounts to counteract, to say, 10 positive things. So it's really, it happens all the time. And you guys probably have had this experience too, but as you go through your career, you start having people say, "Well, I don't understand what the big deal is. Why can't you just create an account and do that?" And actually, it is a big deal. It's a very big deal.
Well, that's the kind of stuff that gives the industry its bad name. That behavior right there. It's lying. No matter what, you can call it whatever
it's
you
lying,
want. It's unethical.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, and for many people, social media is the go-to outlet to get their news. Yet we know there are still plenty of news programs airing on the radio and television, and the daily newspaper is still produced. What are your thoughts on the changing landscape of the media industry?
It's interesting to watch sort of what's happened. It used to be that, and as I say this, I'm going to admit how old I am, which I don't like to do, but, it used to be that we would build relationships with journalists, and you would have those relationships all the way through your career. In the beginning of my career, I built a relationship with Del Jones, who was at USA Today forever. And then 2008 hit, and he went to send on furlough, and then he never actually got hired back because the media landscape changed so dramatically. So here you have this 15-year relationship that's just, I still keep in touch with him, but not from a business perspective, right? So you have that 15-year relationship sort of go down the drain, where it used to be, if we had a client that was deserving of USA Today, it was pretty easy for me to get them placed in that, right? So it's been interesting to watch and see, sort of the whole phenomenon of, we no longer hold those relationships. Clients, executives, they can have those relationships directly because there isn't the gatekeeper of the PR professional anymore. What I'm most interested in, though, is sort of that gray line of what's happening in terms of disclosure. So as a blogger, you are required to disclose if you're given anything for free, or, free registration or a free book or a free product, you're supposed to disclose that. If you, I'm doing some affiliate marketing for Social Media Examiner right now for their Social Media Marketing Institute. You have to disclose that kind of stuff, right? But journalists don't have to disclose that. So where is that gray line? And, do you have to, if CNN works with HMA, or they work with Arment Dietrich, or they work with Weber Shandwick on an op-ed, should they disclose that? Should they disclose that they got some video coverage from an event that they attended, but the PR person helped them get that video for them to use in their art or in their piece? So I'm really interested in that line right now, because there isn't anything that says, yes, CNN and the Washington Post and the New York Times all have to disclose that they worked with a PR professional on this. That's where I think this is going, is the disclosure piece of it all.
But that hasn't ever really been the case. The journalists would have, the Society of Professional Journalists, their code of ethics. The accepting of gifts was, forbidden for all intents and purposes. But, you described it in the beginning, our relationships with the media and providing them access to sources and information, stories, etc., was how they were able to do what they were to do. you can still read articles in the paper today and know which ones came, through a public
Sure.
relations practitioner or
Well,
what
you
they
and
sourced
the
out.
three of us can.
Right. Yeah. True. But and I think it comes from for me, it also comes on the back end of it when you're reading something, and the type of honesty that comes across somewhat puts that reporter as part of the story. Then that I've received
Sure.
this, or as a result of having access to, this is how I have that information, and then it switches the role of that reporter from a completely objective part of the story and just reporting news to putting themselves in the conversation a little bit. So I do think it'll be interesting to see where it goes.
Yeah, I think so too. And one of the examples, I think I use this in the book, is when President Putin did the op-ed in the New York Times.
Right.
And of course, Ketchum, who has a Moscow office, was working with the Russian government, and they're the ones who wrote the op-ed, and then the New York office placed it. So, where are the ethics on that, and what's the line, and what's the disclosure there? So I think it's really interesting to watch and see. It'll be interesting to watch and see what happens.
Right. And where it appears in the publication itself. If it's on the opinion page, that's exactly what it is. If it appears in the news section of the paper, or on television as a news story versus the opinion of the broadcaster, that's where I think where the challenges are going to come in.
I agree.
So, but the industry continues to evolve, so it'll be interesting to see kind of where that goes. Our students, as I said, are primarily not going to go into public relations. They're choosing to go into related fields that will utilize what public relations can offer by either doing it through their own teams, or they'll be asked to multitask, as many of us are. So if they're thinking about their next steps as they're getting closer to graduation and thinking about that, what advice might you give them as they're thinking about the role of communications? And specifically, as you mentioned, the intent in the book was to really talk to the executive level, the CEO level, maybe not so much the practitioner, although I think the book is fabulous for the practitioner as well. But what might you advise them as they're thinking about how PR will play into what they're going to pursue as a career?
I think doing what they're doing by taking this class, reading as much as they can, curiosity is definitely a skill, especially as you're going into this field in general. There's lots and lots of blogs that are written on the topic, lots of books, of course. So I think reading as much as you can, but also, look for organizations that are doing that. Lots of agencies do special events as part of their communications offering. So look at how they're handling it all, and pay attention to, if you're going into tourism, how the CVB handles in your area, handles events and things like that. So I think there's, just kind of paying attention and being curious is probably the best piece of advice I have.
Well, and in the interest of full disclosure, of course, Ginny and I are acquainted through our relationship with the Public Relations Society of America, and we have served together and spoken on panels together, and I had the opportunity to read the book early on in its launch, and found it to be so valuable for my own internal team. And when Rachel and I were developing the curriculum for this class, we wanted to find a way to incorporate, because I do think it very accurately explains what it is that we do and want our profession to be going through. So if you could think about the book and all the things that you have in there, what two things do you want someone to walk away from after having read your book?
Ethics, 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 ethics.
Okay, that's 5 things.
I know. All right, ethics and ethics. Yeah, I mean, it is. We are faced with, to your point earlier, the industry is ever changing, and it's evolving really quickly, and it's hard to stay on top of things as it is. And then you have this phenomenon where either your client or your executive director or your CEO is playing golf with their buddies, and they're all talking about how many Facebook fans they have and how many YouTube views they have, and well, we got this many good reviews on this, and this many people came to our event. And, they're all comparing those numbers that don't really mean anything. So I think part of it is understanding that there's still a big education that has to happen on the executive side, but also that we have to be doing our be really diligent on doing our jobs the real way, and not just saying, okay, well, yeah, we got you 1,500 people to your event, and it was 500 more than last year, and so we did our job. Well, that may not necessarily be the case. So it's really just being diligent on doing things the right way and measuring the right things and educating the people at the top who don't quite understand it.
Great. Well, thank you so much for spending some time with us today.
You're welcome.
Class, I hope that you found this valuable to have an opportunity to hear from the author of the book. As you know, it's called Spin Sucks. The blog of the same name, spinsucks.com. Which is relatively required reading here at our agency as well, because there is so much on there that is good for what we do, and as you know, practitioners doing public relations on a regular basis, we still have to have opportunities for learning and growing and developing new skills. So we thank you for spending some time with us today, and class, we'll look forward to hearing what you have to say about the rest of the book as we continue throughout the class. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.